Great, so good morning. My name is Danielle. I am working Sam's microphone, it seems, so I will be loud. If for some reason you can't hear me, let me know. That generally doesn't tend to be a problem for me, but just in case, don't be afraid to say something. I work at a firm called New Target. We're actually local and right in Alexandria, Virginia. We do website design, development, integration, just like. So that means everything from content messaging, SEO, obviously we do usability, we also do accessibility, so we kind of try to do everything kind of from the very beginning to the end, and of course we also do maintenance and support. We never like to have our clients, it's not like once your website is live, right, all of a sudden we go away. We make sure to keep going in the process. So kind of already what I covered here. So a little bit about me, right? Why am I even qualified to be up here to talk to you? So I kind of have two roles actually at New Target. I'm a project manager and I'm a usability lead. I am PMP certified, and I also have my certified usability analyst certification through Human Factors. I've been doing usability since about 2005, 2006. Focus groups. You think about those meetings that you have where you talk about maybe your goals as a business, you talk about your users' goals, measures of success. All of those are what we call user-centered design. It's basically that research and that strategy piece in the very beginning. And then, of course, there's usability testing. So that's never going to go away either, I hope, right? We always want to make sure that our users are always involved in the process. So whether that's a wireframe, whether that's related to prototypes, that's where we want to go. We've even done testing where, we've kind of done like the strategy piece for a contract, and we've done the testing on the current website because either testing hasn't been done or we want to get that feedback from the user first. So those are great places to go. So again, font colors, treatments, grouping elements, that will always come into play. So why do we care about persuasive design, right? Why can't we just make something pretty and have that be enough? It's because we're learning that those usability standards that we just talked about, it's not enough anymore. That was great in 2004, 2005, maybe even up to like 2008, 2009, right? But now everybody has a website. And it's not okay if you just have like a small HTML website, right? It's bigger, it's better, has to be done faster. We are all so web-centric that we have to do more. So the other reason why is that it's based on the way that people think, right? We probably, most of us, if not all, have heard of Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think. If you haven't heard of it or you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, because it's based on the fact that people make snap judgments. You look at something, you don't even think about it. In fact, half of the time, you don't even know why you made that decision. I've actually been doing usability testing for one of our clients over the past like 2 or 3 days, And somebody made a comment about the design, and they said, okay, that's actually a really good observation. Like, why do you say that? Her answer, I don't know. It's just how I feel. Like, people just really don't know sometimes why they make decisions. And of course, it depends. Is it something that you're looking at quickly, or is it something where you're doing it deliberately, right? We can't say that across the board about every decision that we make if we're actually sitting down and working on a document or really going through and having in-depth conversations. That's very different, right, than if we just see something. So there was a very interesting research study that was done, I'd say, in the last like 5 years or so, where they had a group of people try different types of jelly. It was all the same flavor, but it was just, you know, from different manufacturers. So they asked people to taste these things and then rate them. So they rated them, quick thing. They then did it again and said, okay, tell me why you would rate these things in a certain way. Like, try them all again and then go through. All of a sudden, when they had to have a reason, it was completely different. So it's a very interesting, like, it's not like your taste buds changed, right? So it's kind of the same thing as on the web. So these are the major principles that we're going to be talking about. It's all about content messaging. It's about kind of how we use those fonts and colors. It's all based on the order that we put them in. And then calls to action, right? A lot of us might work on sites where there's some type of conversion. It might be become a member, might be, you know, join our association, it might be donate, it might be sign up, it might be, you know, change the password, whatever it is. We usually have calls to action on our site. So first one is compelling content and messaging. So these are the three things that we really want to answer, whether we're editing content or we're creating content. So really simple, right? You want to know what the site is about, make sure that people have that, it's clear to them. Making sure that people can figure out, is this what I want? And then not just is this what I want, but is it actually useful to me? So we're going to be looking at a lot of different website examples. So in this, I'm an endurance athlete, so I do a lot of fitness. I'm sure you can tell, endurance athlete, do a lot of fitness, maybe not always in the best way, but you know. So the whole thing though is, I know it's a little bit hard to see on here, but this is for workout videos. So it's for Face Fear Fitness. And I know exactly what it is. Again, I know it's a little bit hard to see up here, but basically, Rachel is talking about how those are her workouts and kind of what they're designed to do. So is this what I want? Well, if I want videos, I want to understand kind of why she's doing things, right? Sometimes we go on, you know, fitness websites and it's basically like a 15-second video, and it's like, okay, buy this, that's it. You know, but this has a little bit more, it seems. And it has Rachel's own story, so it gives me a little bit of motivation. So if that's the type of thing that I'm looking for, then yes, this is the site. Same thing with that would be useful to me if that's something that I'm really looking for. It's really based on, you know, personal preference as to, is this the information that I'm looking for? And the other thing that I think is great, and granted, I'm not saying that this is the best design site ever. We're talking more right about messaging. And again, on the screen it's a little bit harder, but up here, this is actually her bio. So she talks about how she trains people for indoor cycling. She talks about how she has her degree in physiology. She has the background. And so again, we said that we were going to talk about trust, right? So I trust somebody that has a degree in what I'm looking to do, and I trust somebody who is respected in their industry. So for me, you know, that content would work. For somebody that maybe is not into working out, or, you know, this isn't their thing, it wouldn't. But it's all about trying to sell that. So the other thing, though, trying to not use superlative. It's been around for a long time. It's been around since 1943. It's still around in 2014. That's a good thing, right? They must be doing something right. But at the same time, they say that they make the perfect pizza. Like, what is the perfect pizza, right? Like, and who judges what the perfect pizza is? Have they tried every single pizza place in the entire world? Probably not. You know, it's kind of like when people say it's the easiest or it's the best. And it doesn't really work on us either, because if you think about as a user, when you go to look at something and somebody says, oh, it's the best, you're like, okay, yeah, it's the best, you know, and you kind of move on. So try to, you know, think about what you're using for your wording when you're selling. And same thing again, I know it's a little bit harder here, but this quote about perfect pizza was written in 1996. It is now 2014. I don't know about anybody else. I mean, I know, like, when it comes to research and things, you know, it takes a little bit, but I don't know if that would be as convincing to me, you know, that many years later. So just be careful, you know, in terms of that. And again, it goes back to updating your content, thinking about how you're doing things. So the next piece is making a strong visual impact. So I'm sure everybody goes, yeah, okay, obviously for design, right, we want to make a strong visual impact, but how do we actually go about doing that? So it's all about first impressions. Again, if we go back to research, they have said that 90% of things that matter on websites to people now are the images, and about 10% is the content. So a little ironic, right, because we just talked about creating compelling messaging, right? That doesn't mean that that throws that out the window. What it means is that instead of write these long pages of content or, you know, even paragraphs and paragraphs of content, it has to be short, it has to be sweet, it has to tell the story. So, you know, Blue Apron is an interesting example because, you know, through word of mouth and advertising, really, Blue Apron has gotten, you know, name recognition. At the same time, you know, we can't assume that everybody knows what Blue Apron does, and if I'm short on time, which so many of us are, right, I see this great picture of all of these fresh ingredients, I see the recipes, you know, it's all laid out for me, there's short messaging, I already know what this site is about, and then I have my Join Now button. I don't technically have to scroll all the way down the page if I don't want to. I can, and, you know, I'm interested to see what else they have. But it's really telling that story very quickly and doing it through really great images. So really, what makes a site visually appealing? So this is, full disclosure, something that UTarget did for the Corcoran. Very sad, because as some of you may know, probably won't see the light of day, but that's okay. It's just the way, unfortunately. But, you know, we still like to show it off, right? And the Corcoran, it was interesting because they have the gallery of art and they have the college. So again, you know, we'll talk about user and business goals, and we talked about needing to do that for user-centered design, right, of how to get that together. So it doesn't mean that their current homepage is bad necessarily. It's just that if I'm really interested in coming to a museum, or even if I'm interested in going to a college that's for art, I want to see big art, right? So that's kind of why we made that change, because on the left-hand side, maybe half the page is an image, and then, you know, kind of get a slider. And again, I know it's not the easiest to see on the screen, but all of a sudden they're talking about continuing education, and they're talking about camp, and those things are all important, but it's not really the top thing, right, that they probably want to, quote-unquote, sell to people. It's more about the art, it's more about the visual. And so that's kind of why we went down the page. So yes, making the visual impact, having that strong visual, is about the fonts, it's about the colors, it's about the hierarchy, it's about the white space. It's really about just making things less complex. You know, it's getting away from, we want to showcase everything on our homepage, or we want to showcase everything on our internal pages. And it's important for me to say that too, right? Because so much we get into the whole, well, our homepage is really visually stunning and it looks great, right? And then you click into a site and you're like, ooh, okay. You know, avoid the, ooh, okay, you know, and carry that throughout every single page, right? That's why I keep saying your website and not your homepage. Like, it should be throughout the entire website. You know, and we actually did, you know, carry this theme throughout, and, you know, you see a lot of things like Blue Apron, you know, they carry that theme throughout, even if it's the calendar of when you're getting meals and when you decide to not get meals, you know, whatever it may be. It's really just a small calendar, and that's it, and that's the only thing that they have on the page. They use navigation and other items to really drive you to where they want you to go. So content hierarchy, as well as visual hierarchy. So this one's always a little bit tricky, right? Because our business goals may be very different from our users. So I hate to tell you that I don't have like a catch-all of how to, do the best thing, but it really is through that user-centered design and usability, right? Again, we're talking about going beyond that, but it doesn't mean get rid of that. So that's still something very important. An easy way, without even looking at an example yet, is let's say I had 5 different circles here, right? And I have, red and I have black markers. That's all I have. But I can still create a visual hierarchy for everybody based on the size of those circles and the placement of those circles. And based on kind of what that looks like, that's where your eye is going to be drawn to. So that's really the goal too, is making sure that you are making people look at what you want to look at based on font, based on size. So for example, let's talk about Home Depot, right? We know that if we go into Home Depot, even if you know what you're looking for, right? Unless if you know every single aisle, I don't know about anybody else. I'm actually doing some home improvement now. I get really overwhelmed because I'm like, oh, well, there's kitchen. The candles are in how many different aisles? You know what I mean? It's one of those things where they could have made their website look like their store, right? And just have you be so confused. And we've seen so many product websites, right, that do that just have lines and lines and lines and lines. And honestly, when you get into an internal page at Home Depot, you will see generally lines and lines and lines, right? But at least on their homepage, and a lot of times, again, people are doing this based on season, they're doing it based on where you are. But it's summer, right? So people probably are more likely to be looking at patio furniture, grills. They've chosen what people are looking for now, most likely. I mean, obviously, there are always going to be people looking for other things. But they've helped make that decision based on A, they're trying to push products either out the door of a warehouse or out the door of their store, right? And they're trying to meet the user goal of, it's summer, I am staining my deck, or it's hot outside and I want a fan. They're realizing what the user is probably looking for. And they do it in a nice way. So again, this time it's patio furniture that they've chosen. Really nice big image. Nice messaging at the top too to kind of go down and make sure that you're seeing what's most important, but not hiding the navigation from the user. So if you really don't care about patio furniture, right, and you are looking for paint or, something else, so you can easily still get to that and not have to hunt around. So, and then again, providing more options for you down there at the bottom. So Target doing things a little bit differently, right? It is a little busy at the bottom, but again, as we know, Target, you walk in there, store's a little busy, also have the tendency, right, to buy 5 times as much as you need to, so their website at least matches that. But I really wanted to show this too for the color as well. So they're not really using imagery per se. I mean, yes, they do have some in there, but it's really about the color. And I know that as designers, right, hating the word makes it pop. If you ever talk to a designer, right, hate the word, it makes it pop. I'm really sorry for all the designers in here, but the colors make the page pop. It gives it visual impact. And I brought this up because a lot of times, either a client will ask us, or even internally we'll have these discussions, and it's, so you say to not use color XYZ, maybe either because it's a color contrast issue, or we know that some people have red-green color blindness, so we try to limit that sometimes. What colors are best? So I bring this up because, to be honest with you, no one color is best. I mean, you could do a black and white contrast, kind of like, what we saw on the Corcoran site, and that would still be best maybe for that website. And what I'm trying to show is, so here we have a whole bunch of white, right? But up top, we have a bright yellow, we have, the bright blue, And then we have white on top of that with the red. So it's very visually, I don't want to say like visually stunning. I mean, it's Target, come on, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it does make that visual impact because you're not seeing something just straight color. You know, it's very different, and it's choosing colors that catch your eye. So just the whole point of that is, you know, don't feel like, okay, well, when I'm designing my site, I have to use yellow because that works best, or I have to use green because that works best. Just making sure that you're using a color palette and, again, styles that really show that visual contrast. So the age-old focusing people's attention, right? How many people here have ever had trouble either designing, looking at a site, anything, trying to figure out where either your attention should go or where, you know, you should be designing, right? It's not easy, again, especially because we have that, we want 20 things on the homepage, or, you know what, stakeholder X wants this, stakeholder Y wants this, user A wants this, user B wants this. We have 5 target audiences, you know, whatever it may be. We still have this issue, right? So there's a few things that we can do to really make sure that this works well. So it may seem obvious to say, like, use imagery that matters the most, right? But if you think about Airbnb, I mean, they do have some photos down here, and they even talk about, like, if you clicked on the story behind the new Airbnb, they have a lot of pictures of kind of destinations, you know, of where you could be. I mean, they have things from even DC, right? I mean, some of us are from this area, so it's sad to say, but like the Capitol building kind of loses its novelty, right? Or the Washington Monument, or any of the memorials, you know, whatever it may be, the landmarks kind of lose that. But for people who aren't from here, it's like a really big thing. Just like when we travel, you know, the Eiffel Tower is really important to us, or Big Ben, or, you know what I mean, whatever it is, these great landmarks. So they could be choosing that as somebody going like, I'm going to go on a vacation. That sounds great, right? But what is Airbnb, right? It's about a place to stay when you're on vacation, when you're on business, you know, whatever it may be. And so it's making sure that you are choosing, you know, it may not seem exciting to see somebody sleeping, right? This is actually visual, so it's a little bit of, not necessarily a video, but there is some movement in there to show that that's really the main purpose of what you're trying to do. And then you use that supplemental imagery of, you know what, here are all the great things that you can say, or sorry, see, here's all the great things that you can do, and really kind of taking that to the next level. So, element of surprise. I don't know if anybody has seen, you know, these Equinox commercials, the ads, the billboards. They have gotten a lot of comments. I know that they actually had a billboard in Bethesda where the woman was a lot more scantily clad than this, you know, and it really evoked a powerful, powerful reaction. You know, people were either like, wow, that's bold, and it's awesome. And other people were, wow, that's bold. I am totally offended by seeing that in public. You know, it was, but at the same time, whether it's offensive or whether you like it, it worked, right? People are talking about it, and it really gets Equinox a lot of publicity. Again, whether good or bad, but it gets people talking. They've done advertising around it. It's really their new kind of slogan. But it's really about, you know, when you go to a gym website, right, do you really expect to see somebody in like jean shorts just kind of hanging around having fun? No. Like most of the time, right, when we see gym things, it's kind of like the first one that I showed you with Rachel, right? You expect to see somebody lifting weights. You expect to see somebody, you know, sweating, or maybe they're smiling while they're cycling on a bike, which as a spin instructor, like, most people aren't smiling while they're spinning on a bike, but you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we're happy, we're working out, you know, and so it's a very different type of image than what you see here. And the other thing that is interesting too is, again, most of the content for gyms and things like that is maybe a little transactional, you know, like come here and, you know, go either register for a class or try a class pass or whatever it is. Yes, they have their call to action of schedule a visit, but we pre-apologize for making it this good. Again, really bold. Some people may even say a little bit obnoxious, right? But at the same time, very different from every other gym and makes you very curious. And I will try to not run into things. So again, visual impact, but also kind of a selling technique for your website. So we've seen, kind of Microsoft doing this too. It's all the competition, right? And in a way, it works because you think about, way back in the day, right? And somebody was like, I have a PDA. It wasn't really a PDA. It was like, I have a Palm Pilot, right? That was the only thing that was around was a Palm Pilot. Well, now it's like, oh, your phone, do you have something from Apple, Sony, Samsung, anything. I mean, I can't even name them all because I feel like we'd be here for 5 minutes just having me list, different manufacturers. But that being said, it is a good way to at least start with compare and contrast. So price point might get you a little bit. I think it's the visual is really what says it. But at the same time, if you, for example, whether it's even on a new website or say you sell something on your site, right? If you make any improvements, it's really helpful to show this is what it used to look like, and this is what it looks like now. Or, this is how it used to work. This is how it works now. Obviously doing that in a way, if you're comparing or contrasting to yourself, that you're not like, our old thing was really, really bad, and now we made it actually work, choosing the messaging to say, what worked and what didn't. If you have a competitor, maybe being a little bit careful, but at the same time saying, this is what they have, this is what we have. Really showing that compare and contrast to make it more obvious. So designing for different patterns. So everybody knew, right, Apple was probably going to come up at some point. I'm going to say this right now. Do not try to be Apple, right? Just like we try to not be Google. Apple is Apple for a reason. Google is Google for a reason. Not to say that we can't all make beautiful sites, but we probably don't have hundreds of people, right, making our websites. As well as the fact that they are distinct brands, just like every single one of us works for an agency, a vendor, whatever it may be. Maybe you can work for yourself, whatever it is. So it's all about being unique. But I bring this up because, in a lot of different pages, sometimes what happens, right, especially blog pages and news pages, what happens, right? We run into that syndrome where it's like, here's a picture, and then here's some text, and here's our more link, and then here's a picture, and here's some text, and here's a more link. And we do that all the way down the page. Or we even do it for, quick text callouts, where here's an element, the same element, here's another element of the same thing, and we just repeat it down the page. If we do that on one page, not a big deal. We do it on 2 pages, really still not a big deal. We keep doing that throughout our site, people are going to get bored, right? Think about your attention span. And I hate to say it, not calling out anybody individually. I just mean as people, right? Our attention spans are so short. We get bored at the simplest things. So even something as having items all in, you think it looks clean, right? It should. It does look clean. You would be right. But just doing that down a page, people just get bored. So I say design for different patterns because, we have the top image and we have those nice 3 images. But even though, in a way, we're talking about text and then imagery, there's still 2 here, there's another row down there. It's just something different. That's not to say, I'm going to back up for a minute, that's not to say that every single one of your pages should look different because then there's no consistency whatsoever, and also your designers and developers are probably going to go nuts, right, coding a whole bunch of different things. So there is kind of a place where you need to stop and pause for a minute, but the whole purpose is just looks really, really clean, but it's not something of like, oh, here's my image and here's my text and, being boring. So just thinking about that as well. So also helping people make a choice. These websites look really similar. They're both for running shoes. The one on the left is Adidas. The one on the right is Nike. So I will admit this one is more blown up. It actually looks a little bit more and it's in a smaller screen. So kind of like what I talked about with that Home Depot example, right? When you go into that internal page, and just see product after product. The difference between these two is that for the Adidas site, it's talking about the best running shoes, which are great. It's a really nice picture at the top. Looks like somebody's running, exactly what you would expect. But the one on the right for Nike is calling out a particular shoe. That may be their newest shoe, maybe the most popular, but at least it's kind of helping you go for a choice. So even if, you might not want the Lunar Glide 6, but at least you know the term Lunar Glide now, right? So, Nike, like everybody else, in terms of clothing and, shoes and everything else, kind of makes their updates. So it at least puts that term Lunar Glide in your head, so that when you're looking at the products, it might be, oh, there's another Lunar Glide shoe. Let me take a look at that. It just helps kind of guide you a little bit, and at least gives you kind of more of, I would really just say more information in terms of what's there. I may not know anything about Adidas shoes, and I might not know anything about Nike shoes, but at least it helps kind of guide you to where that's going. So creating clear calls to action. So we've all seen websites, right, where there's like 5 different things that somebody's trying to get you to do, and you're just really freaked out because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, and how are you supposed to know what's most important, and oh my gosh, there are 8 different colored buttons on the page, and it just gets to be like too many choices, right? So, again, I know I'm showing some examples where these are like household names, but it's because we do it well. With Twitter, I think most of us know what Twitter is, right, and what you can do. But again, we can't always make the assumption that just because something is popular, that people know what it is. I mean, I think on Facebook the other day, I saw somebody post and were like, what is this hashtag thing? Like, I keep seeing these hashtags, I don't know how to use them, and I don't know what to do. And to some of us, that might be completely commonplace and be like, how do you not know how to use hashtags? Like just based on our experience, is really what kind of technology we may use depends on a lot of different things. So again, in terms of messaging, Twitter does a great job with just, quick explanation. Like, do they really need to say, oh, you can only use 140 characters? Well, that's not really important right now, right? It's all about the fact that it's sharing information, it's quick, it's easy. And they have a really nice, powerful image in the back, which is nice because this actually came from the user. And they have these kind of rotating, so they're not Twitter's images. It's actually showing the product. But in terms of call to action, you're kind of making the assumption for you that you already have a Twitter account. And so it's nice, it's bright and blue. You can see it, it's the first thing on the right column. But then, of course, they don't want to hide the fact that if they want you to sign up or you want to sign up, that you can do that too. So that's right underneath. It's just a visual representation of quick, easy place to sign up, to sign in, and then a nice place to sign up. And you don't have to worry about, finding those like small links in your utility nav. Like they were saying, this is pretty much all that you can do from our homepage, so we're going to make it easy. But they're also using colors to make sure that one is primary, and then there's one that's secondary. So meaning that you don't have to just have one call to action. You don't have to go through and make that decision of, okay, we only have one thing that our users can do that we can call out. Like, what do we do? You can have multiple. It's just, again, using everything that we've talked about above in order to make that happen. So simple, make it work. So a lot of people, who use Woot know that it's kind of like the deal of the day and it's cheaper and things like that. But again, not wanting to make that assumption. Well, here's the problem with the Woot website. So you can click on a link that says what is Woot, which is good. They make it at least easy for you to find out what it is. But at the same time, in the top right, they're basically asking you to kind of sign up before there's anything on the page to tell you what it is. So you actually have to go someplace else first, figure out what this thing is, and then, you can go and sign up. But why ask somebody to sign up first before you've even giving them any detail whatsoever, right, on what this thing is? Same thing we see all the time with like registering for things. Like that makes sense. People, want you to register, sign up for their product, their service, become a member, donate, whatever it is. Can I at least like find out what I'm becoming a member for? Or like if I'm going to give an organization money, like I don't like find out what you do maybe before I'm handing over some of my money. And again, we've seen it on several of these sites. Give me 1 second. There's a great website called Charity Water, and it has this image of this, young girl, and she's drinking out of a fountain, and it just says, at Charity Water, 100% of your donation goes to help, get clean water, basically, for these young girls. So I might not need to know everything about Charity Water, right? I don't need to know every single, place that they work. I don't need to know all of their financial details. I don't need to know all of that. But I at least know, what, if I donate, this is getting clean water for people, which we obviously have without even thinking about it. I already know kind of what my money is going for. So before I actually take some questions, so we had talked about, adding in emotion and trust, right? So every single thing that I talked about has to do with emotion, because it's so, knowing it or not, by our messaging, by fonts, by colors. Yes, some of it might be subjective, right? You might like yellow, you might like blue, but you're really by the complexity of a site. That all drives based on how we feel, whether we know why we feel the way that we do or we don't. Same thing with trust, right? Again, if we go back, kind of to that example with Woot, like if I know this, I probably trust it, but I might want to know, like, how do they get those products? Is it like overstock? Is it, where are these things coming from? Like, I don't know anything about it. Without any information whatsoever, kind of hard to make that decision, right? Same thing again when we looked at that pizza example. Okay, that's great. And that's a great question. So we talked in the beginning a little bit about usability testing, right? And that really is not going away. So it's one thing, so like, for example, I'm in a project now, and we did usability testing on the wireframes. That is so helpful for us to figure out, and they were, responsibly designed wireframes that people could click around. so absolutely important because we figured out, like, is this navigation working well? You know, is the content priority good? You know, are we, you know, even including everything that people want on the site? You know, some people said, hey, this is missing, where is it? So helpful. So we then took that and created a prototype. So we still have all the elements and took, you know, what we learned from wireframe testing and then, of course,